welcome to Literary Prospects, where we talk to authors and literary professionals about books, publishing, and the writing life. I'm Kelley Vick. I'm the host of the program, and in just a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce today's guest. But first, a reminder that if you like what you hear, please do take a moment to subscribe. It helps us out, and you can make sure you never miss an episode. Also, we've opened a Literary Prospects shop, so if you're looking for bookish shirts, totes, and gifts, please check that out at literaryprospects.etsy.com. And to grab books featured on the podcast and check out more curated book lists, you can visit the Literary Prospects bookstore on bookshop.org. We'll leave all those links below in the show notes. And now, let's introduce today's guest. Evan S. Porter is a dad to 2 girls, a blogger, and a freelance writer. He runs the parenting blog Dad Fixes Everything and has contributed to Parents Magazine, The Onion News Network, Ask Men, The Good Men Project, Upworthy, and more. Dad Camp is his first novel. Evan lives in Atlanta with his wife, 2 girls, 2 dogs, and not much in the way of elbow room. Evan S. Porter, thank you so much for joining, and congratulations on your debut novel, Dad Camp. Author Jonathan Tropper says Dad Camp is a frank, funny, and beautifully told story about that very unique and intense love between fathers and daughters, and the exquisite pain that comes from watching your little girl grow up and knowing there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Author Sonam Obsessian says Dad Camp examines raising preteen children with such a great blend of humor and heartbreak. Evan Porter will make you want to laugh out loud and tear up while reading this heartwarming story of the inevitable distance that appears between parents and their growing children. You'll want to call your dad after you finish this book. And author Richard Roper says Dad Camp is a beautifully observed father-daughter story, brimming with wit and warmth. Evan Porter's heartwarming debut is an absolute winner. So with that, what can you tell us about Dad Camp?
Sure. So Dad Camp is my debut novel, and it follows a loving dad named John, who's um, a dad to an 11-year-old girl named Avery, and they've always been super, super close, best buds, inseparable, pals, best friends. But Avery is starting to get to that preteen age, turning into a bit of a grumpy teenager, pulling away from him. And John doesn't. He's set his life up so much to focus on being a dad to Avery. That's the main thing he has in his life, and he's struggling with letting her go and letting her grow up and losing some of the closeness they had. So he whisks her away to this camp that promises to improve the dad-daughter bond over 1 week of summer before she starts middle school. And everything goes hilariously wrong, as you would expect.
What was the spark that inspired this book?
Like I tell people that it was kind of a COVID project, and it sort of was, but in a sort of unique way. I think it wasn't out of boredom that I started writing this, but it was out of being cooped up in the house with my own kids nonstop for like 2 years, and just sort of feeling that I was doing nothing but parenting all the time and having like a total lack of identity of anything else. Like hobbies went out the window, exercise went out the window, friend time obviously went out the window, and just parenting from morning till night every day over and over. And I was struggling with these feelings of, like what else do I have in my in my life right now other than, getting snacks and changing diapers um and then feeling guilty like I should be enjoying this time with my kids, but struggling to do that. And just kind of all this kind of stuff was swirling around, and I wanted to have a creative project, and it all kind of came out in the form of this novel.
And this camp, the camp for fathers and daughters
Mhm.
to reconnect, where did that come from? Is that a real thing?
It is a real thing. I've never been to one actually, but they do exist. There are like these retreats all over the country. You can find them. And so it was based a little bit on some of my research into those. And also I was like a big summer camp kid as a youngin. So I went to sleepaway camp like a bunch of years, and I did like counselor in training one year, and I did like a weekend with my dad at the camp. So not like a full week, not like a bonding week, but it was a cool experience I had with him going for like a weekend in the off season. So kind of I was thinking about the camp that I went to as a kid, the sleepaway camp, when I was like building this place, and yeah, kind of all those ideas coming together.
And you have a lot of interesting characters in this novel. Lots of different dad types, different daughter types. The counselor Dennis is quite an interesting guy. How do your characters come to you? Do you find that you base them on people that you know or have encountered, or did they sort of just come up through the page?
I think they came out, just with different aspects of fatherhood and challenges in fatherhood and masculinity that I wanted to explore, and I couldn't do it all through just John, the main character. And so I think the more that I wrote, the more I was really interested in these side characters. And it was, that was kind of one of the challenges of the book, was like keeping the story focused, building out these side characters and all the different things I wanted to talk about, the sort of the workaholic dad and the stay-at-home dad and the toxic masculinity dad, and like just having so much fun exploring these things, but also like keeping the story focused. So um I really enjoyed writing those side characters, and they're some of my favorite parts of the book.
Let's talk about the adventure box.
Mhm.
There's an adventure box that plays a prominent role in the novel. And this is something that's really a part of your life. Is that right?
Well, it started off fictional, and now we actually have our own.
Oh, oh, that's great.
So,
Okay, yes.
yeah, so I'm not sure if people will have read the book or not, but in the story, John and Avery have this adventure box where they keep little tokens and gifts from adventures they've had together. So, like Avery's first flight, they kept the pin that the stewardess gives you, and little just things that they collect and they give each other, and they put them in this box to save them from their adventures. And it was kind of like a plot device when I came up with it. I wanted something concrete and tangible to represent their bond. Because like, John has this goal of reconnecting with Avery and like rebonding with her, and I was thinking like, what does that look like tangibly, like if he succeeds or fails? And so I had this idea of the adventure box, and like, will they have something to give each other from this summer? And then I can't remember which holiday it was, but after I had written the book, my wife went and bought me a real one, which was really, really cool. Um, and so now we use it exactly like they do in the story. It sits on our a shelf in our living room, and when we go on a trip or we have an adventure as a family, we try to like find a little thing and throw it in there. And one of these days we'll crack it open and we'll have all kinds of like interesting stuff to look back at. And we try to pick interesting things that are not just souvenir shop stuff or a picture, but like we went on a Disney cruise last year, and we won like one of their little game shows on the cruise, and they gave us like a little medal, like a Donald Duck medal or something. We threw that in there, just like unique, fun objects that we can look back on one day.
Yeah, what a cool thing to use for a sort of time capsule
Yeah, exactly.
of your family's life and time together. You have these really cool half chapters
Mm.
kind of scattered throughout the narrative in which we see backstory, different points in the life of the protagonist John and his daughter Avery growing up. How did you decide to structure it in this way?
Um, yeah, those are some of my favorite pieces of writing in the book. I think that
Mhm.
the book is so focused, and it like I kind of designed it to be simple to write because it's one place and it's a short period of time and it's relatively limited number of characters. This was my first novel, so I wanted the degree of difficulty to be like a
Yeah.
little bit lower. I wouldn't want to take on total magnum opus, but I wanted to find a way to like show pieces of their life before without like having to take forever for them to get to the camp. And so I really kind of enjoyed those little flashbacks, and seeing different things. They're kind of really really built around the sacrifices and things that John has given up to be a great dad, or
Mhm.
or parts of his life and identity that he's put aside in order to be there for Avery. And so he probably makes some questionable or selfish decisions at different points in the novel, but the intent is that you kind of see like everything that he's given up to be a great dad, and so why you kind of understand why he's struggling with letting go.
Yeah. You also use the present tense. The novel's written in the present tense, including the backstory chapters, which I think is a really interesting choice and it works well. What made you choose present tense for this narrative?
I wanted it kind of just came out like that. That was the way when I started writing it. It was very natural and it felt organic and I wanted you to really be in John's head. And I think one of the cool things about the book and one of the challenges of it is that you never really get a good beat on Avery's perspective because you're never out of John's head. So you can only see what he sees and he's confused with what's going on with her and he's trying to you know decipher her behaviors and you never really get her exact perspective and I think that was crucial to how the book works and
Mhm.
to to raising a teenager or a growing teenager so and also I just really liked writing in first person. It was a good way to make it really voicey and really snappy and really funny, so I think that was a natural fit.
Yeah. You have a blog called Dad Fixes Everything. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that name "Dad Fixes Everything" came from something that my now 9-year-old said a couple years back. I think I, who knows, changed a light bulb or something, and she was like, "Dad fixes everything," and so that was great, and I wanted to use that, and yeah, I mean, it just started off as I was writing down things that uh, I might wonder, as a parent in the middle of the night or like things that you'd be frantically Googling, like, "Oh, like what's the difference between a diaper and a pull-up? Like, is there a difference? Is one like more absorbent than another?" Like just kind of like at these questions you might ask and wanting to have somewhere to go to find them. And yeah, I just started writing them down for myself and doing research and answering my own questions and putting them on the blog.
And then you go from writing the blog to deciding that you're going to write fiction and write the novel.
Mhm.
I know you said it was sort of a COVID thing that you wanted a bigger project to work on, but what made you decide that that thing was going to be fiction, was going to be a novel?
Mhm. Um, I have a little bit of a background in screenwriting. Like I've written some screenplays and some, spec scripts, some pilots and things like that in my 20s. And it kind of fell by the wayside as I got into my career and being a dad and things like that.
Mm,
So I missed that aspect of the creative writing, but I think I was really eager to try a new form and to try a novel because I had no expectations for it to get published or to find an agent or anything like that. And so I just wanted to write something that at the end I would be like, "Hey, this is a finished product and I'm proud of it." And it's, maybe it gets published, maybe it doesn't, but
mhm,
it's a finished thing that exists. Whereas the, screenplays are really a blueprint for a movie. Nobody really reads like screenplays on their own. And so
mhm.
it was a new challenge. And I wanted to have that outcome of just having something tangible at the end that I was proud of, whether or not it went anywhere else.
But it did go somewhere else.
Sure. Surprise, yeah.
So so how did that come about? What was the road to publication like for you when you finally, got that draft finished? What happened then?
Um, so then there was a period of self-revision. I tried to put it aside for as long as I possibly could without looking at it or thinking about it. I think coming back to it as fresh and clear as possible is really important. So I think I didn't look at it that first draft again for at least a month, maybe a couple months. I came back and reread it and I thought, okay, I like some of what's here. I think that there's positive things here, but like I feel like it needs, you know, a total overhaul. And so I did a big self-revision, big rewrite, just like kind of adding in more scaffolding of like, basic storytelling techniques like tension, stakes, conflict. It was kind of really shooting from the hip before that. So it had
Mm.
a lot of heart and a lot of voice, but it didn't have a lot of the structural pieces that a book needs. So adding those in by myself was probably the big first major edit. And then I got a manuscript evaluation from an editor, and he had some really kind things to say about it. And that was the first time I thought, wow, like maybe I could actually like polish this up even further and send it out to agents, and maybe I could make something happen with this. And so did another round of revision and started, whipping up my query letter and preparing myself for that journey.
Well, and then you whipped up the query letter,
I
And
whipped
let's
up the query letter,
keep
and I was really
going.
excited for that process because, like, back when I had written screenplays, I won a screenwriting contest about probably 13 or 14 years ago now. And it was really exciting winning that contest and having agents and managers being like, "Hey, we want to see your script. Can we see your script?" And I was like, "This will be fun. This is gonna be fun, even if nothing happens." And just having that excitement and having the unknown of like the possibility that something could happen with the book. Um, so I did what all writers with no connections do, and started making my list with Query Tracker, and I got my query letter in shape, and just started sending it out, and you know, I would
Got an agent.
I want to see I want to say it was maybe a couple months of that before I connected with my agent now, Andrea, who came in at the very last minute. I had another offer of representation, and I think I was due to get back to them in a couple days, and she was like, "Hey, like I'm gonna read this over the weekend and get back to you." And we connected on that following Monday, and she offered to represent me, and then she hasn't steered me wrong since. So
How did you know that she was the one? You said you were about to go in a different
yeah,
direction.
I think that Dad Camp is a really unique book. Doesn't fit in neatly into a lot of genres, into like a lot of genre boxes, and so it could have been viewed as a tough sell. And I think some of the other agents I talked to maybe liked the writing, but were like, I'm not exactly sure how to package this, not exactly sure how to pitch this, not sure who the right, fit would be. Like, we can give it a shot, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, Andrea was very confident in knowing exactly what it was and who it was for, and that we could find a home for it. And just that enthusiasm and that confidence is what sold me.
What is your, well, are you working on are you working on a new one now? You
I
still
am. Yeah, I am writing. I am writing. Actually just finished a very, very messy first draft of something. So, I've got irons in the fire, so to speak.
And what's your daily writing routine like?
Total chaos. Total chaos. I have I have two young kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old. As we're recording this now, we're in summer break, and so they're both doing swim team in the morning, and we've got swim meets, and we've got soccer practice, and we've got, just really no summer camps. And so my oldest is home all the time, and it's just like anytime I can sit down and squeeze in a couple hundred words, like I'll take it. That's a win. I've taken to writing more at night now because my brain is quieter. There's like a little bit less going on. And so that's been working for me recently, which is totally different from when I wrote Dad Camp during like kind of like COVID lockdown. Totally different process and routine. So kind of interesting how things change over the course of a couple years, like based on who you are and like what your life circumstances are.
Yeah, where you can find that time and that quiet time to sort of get in the
Really hard, and it only gets harder, I think. So
Have you always written? Have you always
yeah,
been a writer?
I think I think naturally, like if I knew I was never going to make a living at it, I would still need to write something. I think it's why I was drawn to blogging,
Mhm.
because I could write whatever I wanted, and you know maybe I didn't know at the time that I was going to be able to like turn that into a job, but I just needed to express myself through the written word, I guess. And that's how I prefer to communicate, rather than talking and stuff. So this book launch period will be an interesting test for me, I think. But yeah, I've always written. I wrote for my college newspaper. I wrote blogs way before. I wrote jokes for like the Onion News Network. I've written all kinds of freelance projects. So yeah, it's just something I'm drawn to, and I think uh it's I have a talent for it in certain ways. And so yeah, it's just something I think I would continue to do no matter what happened career wise.
Do you consider yourself a plotter or a pantser? Do you, when you sit down, do you sort of outline and you know where you're going, or do you work and just sit down and start writing and see where it goes?
Mm. Somewhere in the middle. I think I'm a plotter in the sense that I need to know the major plot points that I'm heading
Mhm.
toward. Like I need some sense of the structure and like where am I writing to? I need like guideposts along the way, because a manuscript is just so long and it's so many words. I think I would be completely lost if I didn't have a sense of, okay, like what's the midpoint or what's the end of the first act. those kinds of things, but I leave myself a lot of room in between those to just kind of find the story. And I think that's where the real magic of writing is for me, like is in that discovery. I think it's almost like improv. When you're writing a scene, you're kind of you surprise yourself a lot of the time. Even if you've outlined a scene thoroughly, like you still have to make so many little decisions on the fly about what do the characters say and like what how are they moving throughout the space and what happens next and like that to me is like the real magic and fun of writing. So I try to get through the basic outline and then I want to get on the page as fast as possible.
Does it change? Do you find that your initial outline changes a lot by the end, or are you able to stick pretty?
Yeah, I would say so because I think at least for me, sometimes the outlining feels a little inorganic. It
Mhm.
feels like I'm forcing my characters to do X, Y, Z, and then you get to that point in the writing and the manuscript, and you're like, well, it doesn't feel right anymore, and so you can kind of change it on the fly. So yeah, I think it changes a lot, and characters will change. I think characters will say something that surprises you and tells you more about them and you're like, huh, that's interesting. It's just like
Mhm.
things that come off the tip of your fingers that you could have never known before.
What do you know now that you wish you had known before starting the oftentimes when I ask this question, I say you should know before you published your first novel. We're sort of on this cusp of
Yeah.
your debut, but what do you know that you wish you'd known at the beginning of this process?
um It takes a very long time. I think I didn't fully appreciate how long it takes to go from book deal to book on the shelf. Like it's a very long process. And even if you see the amount of time on the calendar, if I told you it takes 18 months or 2 years or whatever, when you're in it, you're like, I cannot believe how long this is this is taking. There's just very long stretches where it's just you and your editor working on the manuscript, and then there's very long stretches where the publisher's working on stuff, but you don't really have a whole lot going on, and so um, just having the patience and having other projects to work on is really important. But I think we can be anxious and worry and be impatient and work on other stuff at the same time. So I think it's just yeah, it's just that's a big challenge of the process is just how long it takes when you're eager to share your work with the world.
Yeah, but well, yeah, and you've drafted a whole other novel in this time, right? Like as
Right,
you're
exactly. And I felt like I was behind. I think I know people who've already been through edits on their second novel by the time their debut comes out. So I was like, man, I got really got to get on it. But
you almost have to refamiliarize yourself with the novel that you're promoting by the time it comes out.
you really do. I mean, I wrote the first draft of Dad Camp 3 years ago. So the bulk of the work and the writing and the sort of like emotional work of writing it was done so long ago. And I'm like, I'm a different person. I'm in a different phase of life, and you've been editing it, you've been going through revisions and all that, and to the point where you're sick of it. But yeah, you're kind of in your next phase, your new project that you're working on, and now it's like, okay, now it's time to go back to this and really like promote it and talk about it. So that's interesting.
How do you what is that like? What is the preparing and the getting ready to actually do all of the promotional stuff?
I think for it, Dad Camp is such a personal story to me, and I don't want to say it's based on my life or anything like that, but it's based heavily in my own like experience with fatherhood, and so that part of it at least is like very fresh for me because
Yeah.
it's every day, it's every day of my life, and I'm experiencing new phases of fatherhood all the time, and so I have even more perspective on some of the things that I wrote about in the book, almost to the point where I'm like, God, I wish I could go back and like add or change things, but too late for that. But um, yeah, so the bulk of the writing, is not as fresh, but the themes and the emotions of it are very top of mind, like all the time.
What's your favorite thing that you've read recently?
Gosh, there's so many good ones. I've read a lot of debut authors that are coming out this year.
Mhm.
Um, and that has been really fun to connect with other first time authors and to read their work. So many good ones. Strong Like You by TL Simpson was really great. That's a YA. Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim is great, getting a lot of buzz. Um, right now I'm reading The Dividing Sky by my friend Jill too, which is like a YA dystopian. And so I'm just having a blast going through this list of people that I've met and reading their books. But I've also got the new David Nichols novel in hardback waiting for me as soon as I get a break in my TBR, and I'm really excited to dive in. David Nichols is like my all-time goat, so I'm excited to see his new one.
What is there a particular book, throughout your lifetime of reading that you find that you recommend the most?
I mean, I do sing the praises of David Nichols anytime anybody asks me for a recommendation. The One Day adaptation just came out on Netflix, and so he kind of was back in the spotlight. But his whole catalog is great. My favorite is Us, about a couple in the middle of a divorce that are traveling through Europe together with their son. That's a fantastic one. Sweet Sorrow was my first one that I ever read by him, and I think probably one of the best things I've ever read on like young love, first loves. And so he's got an amazing catalog. Read anything by him. I always say that any random sentence in one of his books is like the best thing I've ever read. So
And what about with your kids? Is there a favorite book that you've read with your kids?
yeah, oh God, there's so many. We have hundreds and hundreds of books just spilling out of our shelves here at home. We really like Sandra Boynton, who does like Hippos Go Berserk
Mhm.
and It's Pajama Time, and we do love Dr. Seuss. We still have Dr. Seuss stuff. Really anything with like a catchy rhyme. We love catchy rhymes in this house. So yeah, we've got so many. And it's the kids are so fickle too. Like one thing will be their favorite for like a week and then they're done with it. You never see it again for months and months. So they're on to something new.
A catchy rhyme is always good, though.
Yes.
What advice do you have for aspiring authors who may not have even finished that first draft yet, or maybe they've got that draft finished and it's sitting on their computer?
Yeah. I would say, there's a couple of things. The first would be, hopefully these aren't like horribly cliche, but I would say you have to write, what you would want to read and write sort of the book of your heart. I think that's really important. That's what I did with Dad Camp, and then finding out later that it's like, oh, maybe this is a bit of a hard sell and it doesn't exactly fit neatly into a box like that's marketable and saleable and things like that. But I think it does well because it's full of energy and heart, and it's a passionate book really to me. So um, I think that's important, not trying to chase trends and chase what's popular and chase what's saleable, but because you just never know what people are going to connect to and what the next trend will be or whatever it might be. So you can only write something that you care about, because it takes so much work and you're going to be rewriting it over and over again. So you better love that story.
Yeah,
Um, and then the other piece would just be to recognize like the marathonness of it, and you just have to stay in the game. And I remember seeing a statistic that was like, only X number of people that start a novel will finish it, and only a certain number of those people will revise it, and only a certain number of those people will revise it again. And if you can, kind of like work your way down that funnel, I mean, you can really put yourself in a much better situation if you stick with it versus giving up halfway or writing that first draft and putting it away. You gotta keep working on it.
it's great advice. We have a traditional last question.
Okay.
And the traditional last question is, when Dad Camp is turned into a movie or series, what do you think the theme song should be?
Oh wow. You know what? I have like this is very unofficial, but I have a little dad camp playlist on Spotify that every time I hear a great song about like moms or dads or parents, like I throw it on there. And
I love that.
uh I love The Best Day by Taylor Swift. It's a song about her growing up. And I think it's written about her mom in particular, but her mom always being there for her. And it's like, I had the best day with you today. Um, that's the first one that comes to mind. It's one of the key songs on the unofficial playlist. So I think that'd be a good one.
I love that. And now you've inspired me to go look for that song and listen to more Taylor Swift.
Yeah, get ready to cry. It's a tearjerker.
Evan Porter, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Kelley.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.